Woo! What a game. What an amazing game. What an amazing final. Um, oh, so first of all, sympathies for the Leinster fans. I'd imagine that must be gut-wrenching. But congrats to Toulouse. 31 points to 22. Deserved winners. Very, very close extra time. I did not expect that at all. I thought we would be done by the 80th minute. So congrats to both teams for just putting up an amazing show. So as a South African, we haven't had many exposures to European finals before, unless you were a hardcore rugby fan back in the Super Rugby days. So more of a question for the European viewers: how does that rank in all of the European finals? I'm guessing that's one of the best ever. That was absolutely insane. This is a little bit different to what I usually do on this channel. So if you're new here, welcome. I usually do tactical analyses of rugby matches that are hopefully entertaining and informative at the same time. So if you don't want to miss it, please give a like and subscribe, and let's get stuck into it. I think let's start with the first half. One of the defining features of this first half for me personally was just how both teams struggled to get into their rhythm. I'd imagine if you were a fan of either team, it must have been so frustrating to watch your team attack. There were missed balls, dropped balls, missed offloads. I'm used to seeing Leinster play as someone that watches the URC, and usually they are so clinical and they are so meticulous and accurate, and their attack is just a joy to watch. But in the first part of this game, it just wasn't like that. There was a break by James Lowe, and he had a clear break. He had one defender in front of him. All he had to do was to give the offload to his right to a player inside of him. Can't remember who it was, but he completely missed him. He completely missed his supporting player, and I was honestly kind of baffled because in my mind, 9 times out of 10, that ball would have gone to hand and they would have had a clear run-in for the try. By halftime, Leinster had 39% of their possession in Toulouse's 22. That is an insane stat, and we're used to seeing those stats from this team, but the fact that they had 39% of their possession and they couldn't come away with any tries that's pretty telling. Toulouse, on the other hand, only had 6% by halftime in Leinster's 22. This also goes for Toulouse. They also had some missed opportunities, but I think that Leinster had the most, or the worst ones, let's say. I think there were 2 reasons for this, why both were so inaccurate. I think the first one was just nerves. I think the occasion just got to the players a little bit from the beginning. You could see that even though the players weren't necessarily under pressure, on attack specifically, they just couldn't have the handling and the distribution and the accurate passing to really get the momentum that they needed. The second reason, and the one that I, as someone that really likes rugby strategies and tactics and analyzing these things, the one that I appreciated the most was just how absolutely ferocious both teams were at the breakdown. That was an absolute masterclass. I'm considering doing a dedicated video for this. I would love to, but the breakdown work from both teams, it just put their scrum halves, it put the attack itself under so much pressure. It's definitely something that I do want to look at in the future, but for now, it slowed the ball down enough that the defense always just seemingly had an advantage. The ball very rarely got to the edges in the first half, and this led to quite a scrap. Let's be honest. At certain times, it wasn't maybe as much flair as we would have expected, but as someone that likes to see the contest at the trenches, that was absolutely great. I think when we look at this game from an overview perspective, it was very, very even. I mean, obviously, it was always going to be close. It went into extra time, but no team had a clear advantage in the stats. You could argue maybe Leinster had, so we'll dive a bit deeper into that, but it's not like one team completely dominated the stats over the other team. One area where Leinster did have the upper hand was in their attack, particularly in their post-contact meters. So they had 186 carries and they had 434 meters post-contact. So this would suggest that they had some good periods of attacking momentum during the game. And I think looking back at the game, they did look threatening in certain periods. But like I mentioned, they just couldn't capitalize on that. For Toulouse, they had a lot of turnovers. So they had 13 turnovers, and a lot of them came at the breakdown. A lot of these turnovers came at crucial moments as well. And I think that completely took away a lot of momentum that Leinster had. And this leads me to someone that I really do want to talk about. Antoine Dupont. How is this guy real? He had an absolutely amazing game. There are many times when we talk about players and people will bring up players and they're like, this guy is absolutely exceptional. This guy, he's going to be an all-time great. And then the next game, maybe he doesn't play that well. Maybe over the course of the next year, he takes a step back. This guy is always on his A game. I don't think I've ever seen him play a bad game. This game was no exception. And he provided a lot of stability for the team throughout the game. I mean, that 50-22 that he pulled off, he had about 3 defenders in his face jumping up and he still managed to get the ball through. And it just completely changed the momentum. Yeah. I mean, I said it on Reddit, and maybe this is a bit controversial, but I think there's a very high likelihood that this guy retires as being one of the best players ever, at least in terms of playing ability. Discipline-wise, both of these teams were really equal. Toulouse's red card was towards the end of the match, so I don't think it had a massive effect. As was Leinster, they had the yellow card. I think, it was in the beginning of extra time. I think Toulouse just capitalized on that one-man advantage a little bit better. It's when they scored their try. And I believe, was it the second? No, it wasn't the second penalty. I believe the second penalty came after James Lowe came back on. But it really did hurt Leinster in the end, I think. What allowed Leinster to have so many attacking opportunities was the territory game. They had 58% of the territory, and 33% of the territory was in Toulouse's 22. So they had a lot of field advantage. I think this is really down to, they just have an exceptional back three. And I've mentioned this before, James Lowe is an integral part of their kicking game. He has a really, really good kicking game. I think in this game, he was maybe a little bit off, although maybe some of you can correct me if you think I'm wrong. But I still think he had an exceptional kicking game. They fielded the ball well, and they were really able to push Toulouse back a lot. Contrast this with Toulouse, who had 6% territory in Leinster's 22. I mean, it's absolutely insane how clinical Toulouse was, considering that they won the game in the way that they did. But it was a massive effort from them, particularly on defense. Leinster had really good defense as well, but I think Toulouse was slightly better in keeping connections. Towards the end of the game, Leinster had a lot of opportunities on the outside. Like I mentioned, I think fatigue started to set in towards the end of the game, and I think this favoured Leinster a little bit more. Toulouse had to make 238 tackles in total, and they had a 91% tackle success rate. 238 tackles against Leinster, who perhaps might have the best attack in the world. There's an argument that maybe Toulouse are on par, but that just shows the absolutely colossal defensive shift that Toulouse put in to win this game. And now this brings up a very interesting question that I'd love to hear your input on, especially as a Leinster fan. Jacques Nienaber has brought in a defensive system very similar to the Springboks that they used at the World Cup, and it effectively requires the outside defenders, the two outside defenders, to make a very good read. So it requires them to make a very solid decision about whether to shoot up from the outside or to drift. Now, for the last 3 games against Toulouse, Ulster, and Northampton, something that I've noticed in particular is how this system has a lot of weaknesses on the outside. It seems like the defenders aren't yet getting the system, and sometimes their decision making within the system seems to be a bit flawed. Now, like I said, it is going to take a long time to learn. Jacques came in and he said it was basically going to take about 10 games, I believe is what he said. Well, we're beyond 10 games now. So from a fan's perspective, do you think that this has been given enough time? Do you trust Jacques going forward? Or do you think there needs to be some changes there? And as a Leinster fan, how do you feel about this game? I mean, as a neutral watching this, these players gave their all. They absolutely played their hearts out, both of these teams. And it was so close to the very, very end. How do you feel personally about this game? Because it was an amazing performance by everyone. There were some hiccups here and there, obviously. No one's going to play the perfect game. But in the end, I mean, if this was my team, the Bulls, I would feel very, very proud. Although, this is now the 3rd final in a row. So, what do you make of this? Do you think this could be a sign that Leo Cullen has sort of reached the maximum performance, he's gotten the most out of these players that he can get? Do you think a coaching change might be required to take this team to the next level? Or do you think that the fact that Leinster has reached 3 finals in a row now sort of indicates the great caliber of coach that he is? Anyways, let me know what you guys think of the game. Like I said, I'm going to do a full analysis of the game going forward, so don't miss that. And I shall see you soon. Have a nice night, guys.